one of those pardoned, although he didn't ask for it preemptively, for former member of the January 6th Select Committee, Republican former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. So again, you were pardoned. You didn't ask for a pardon. It was preemptive just in case Trump's Justice Department goes after you and other members of the January 6th Committee. What was your reaction when you saw Trump's post last night declaring your preemptive pardon void and vacant?
Well, first off, I'm trying to figure out what he's trying to distract from, because that's what all this is, always a distraction to try to get people's attention, or maybe he hasn't felt like he's gotten enough attention. But look, Jake, it's like, bring it on. Like, honestly, so, you know, we had an election. I fought against Donald Trump. I wanted Kamala Harris to win. January 6th was a big thing, but America made a different choice. Fine, I'm ready to move on. I'm like, look, we made it very clear what happened on January 6th. America made a decision. There is one person that's obsessed about the 6th because he still has been basically deemed guilty in the court of public opinion, and that's Donald Trump, and he can't handle it. He obsesses about it. So my reaction to him is like, you know what? Then bring it. Like, stop talking about it. Stop being all verbose. Stop pretending like you're tough. Bring the charges then if you really want to do it, because we will crush you in court, and it'll make me 3 times more effective against you. Look, honestly, Jake, I'm ready to move on too. But if he wants to keep bringing it up, bring it up or be quiet. That's how I feel.
I want you to take a listen to what President Trump said about the pardons on Air Force One last night.
It's not my decision. That'll be up to a court. But I would say that they're null and void, because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place.
Could you hear that okay? I can read that too if you didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you think Trump's move to say the pardon in his view is void is because he wants to investigate the January 6th committee members? Or do you think this is more about trying to reopen a discussion about President Biden's mental acuity, which, of course, could also serve, as you say, as a distraction?
It's probably a little of both. Look, I think he's obsessed with January 6th, and there's no doubt if he could break the law and come after us, he would. And, you know, again, we'd crush him in the court of law. But I also think, yes, look, if you everything about, he'll give when he had Zelensky in the Oval Office, he was going after Joe Biden. This guy obsesses about Joe Biden because the only time he ran against him, Joe Biden beat him, and that bothers him. And so yes, I think it's constantly trying to change people's view on Joe Biden because he gets stuck. I mean, he's trying to negotiate a solution to the biggest war in Europe, but the guy is obsessed with this vengeance. I mean, Donald Trump, you won. At what point are you like, yeah, I won. I'm vindicated. I feel vindicated. But he can't. He's a small man that just continues to get angry. And it's like, fine, bring it on then.
Here's some news for you that you probably don't know. President Trump just posted on Truth Social that he is ending the U.S. Secret Service protection for 2 of President Biden's kids, President Biden's son Hunter and his daughter Ashley. What's your reaction to that?
It's just childish. I mean, he did it for John Bolton, Mike Pompeo. This is just a way for vengeance. And by the way, Pompeo was a big supporter of Donald Trump. This is dangerous. Somebody's going to get hurt. And when they get hurt, it's going to blow back on Trump. And, you know, look, I hope the next president doesn't do this to Donald Trump. And I mean that, and his family. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do now. He's a very dangerous precedent. And again, this is what happens when you put a 78-year-old toddler in the White House, unfortunately.
History of courts interpreting the Alien Enemies Act, it won't hold up either. You know, the use of the Alien Enemies Act in World War II to round up Japanese Americans is one of the biggest blemishes on our history constitutionally. And it's because that doesn't constitute an invasion, so to speak. It's not a coordinated invasion by an army of a foreign power, for example. I doubt that higher courts are going to understand the Alien Enemies Act in the sort of loose way that President Trump is interpreting it now.
There's one more piece of sound I want to play because it's from the plaintiff's co-counsel in the lawsuit against the president and his use of the Alien Enemies Act. Here's part of what she said.
Because the president is seeking to deport people without any process at all, we have no reason to trust any representations that are being made that the people that have been deported are gang members. We have no reason to trust anything that is being said, because this is an effort to end run process.
Legally speaking, does the administration have to provide evidence that these gang members are who the administration alleges they are?
Well, it depends on whether the Alien Enemies Act applies or not. The whole point of using the Alien Enemies Act is because you don't have to do individual determinations of whether somebody belongs in the country or not. You can sort of subvert all of the due process to which somebody is ordinarily due by declaring them to be part of an enemy invasion and then deporting them wholesale the way that the administration is doing right now. The woman that you just played, her argument is that the Alien Enemies Act shouldn't apply at all, but that we should also distrust some of what the administration is saying because they are purposefully using this act to deprive clients like hers of their due process, Chris.
So, Tara, meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Axios, and I'm quoting here, if the Democrats want to argue in favor of turning a plane full of rapists, murderers, and gangsters back to the United States, that's a fight we're more than happy to take, along with the president of El Salvador releasing some video of these men arriving in their country. We saw the videos of them having their heads shaved. We heard how Tom Homan called it a beautiful thing to see. What does this tell you about how the White House sees this as a political fight and the optics over this?
Well, unfortunately, this White House doesn't give a damn about the Constitution or due process. They care about the optics. And the American people should care about the Constitution and should care about whether the laws are being applied fairly or not. Most people would say, well, you know, these are gang members and get them out of here and get by any means necessary. Except that when you start to make exceptions for the rule of law because it's people that you don't like or because it's the lowest of the low, it opens up the opportunity for them to start skirting the law and subverting the constitutional order for everyone else. Do people really think it's going to stop here? It's not. This spectacle is a disgusting display. And people who are cheering this on should really self-reflect as to whether this is what America is. Because if this is who we've become as a country, then we are in real big trouble. Either we are a democracy or we're not. And this is not how a democracy functions. And Donald Trump is acting in swift order to try to prepare the American people for ignoring the Constitution and our rule of law by trotting out the worst of the worst. It wasn't the worst of the worst when they deported callously the parents of a 10-year-old girl who had cancer, whose parents were undocumented, on their way to the hospital for her recovery, who ICE agents detained and said, well, either the parents are going back and you're separating or you're all going back. They just did that recently. That is not the same thing, but that's what they're doing. Or what about the woman from Canada who went to a San Diego border crossing to get a work visa, who was detained by ICE? Asking her, well, you're Canadian. What are you doing at the San Diego border? She worked in L.A., and her attorney told her she needs to go there to get her visa. It's the closest port of entry. I mean, this is starting to happen in places where there are not people who are the worst of the worst gang members, and ICE is going out here and rounding people up. The fact that they're using this act is a way to prep the American people for them to erroneously and unlawfully apply other things like the Insurrection Act. Is that what Donald Trump is going to do when people decide to protest and he doesn't like it anymore? He's going to invoke the Insurrection Act and say, well, I feel it applies. That's not how it works in America, in a democracy. So I hope that the opposition party and the Democrats, and even some Republicans who know better, need to start speaking up about whether they care about our constitutional order or not, because this is the challenge that we're facing. And if they continue to rationalize this and laugh at it and call it, oh, a beautiful thing, we are in a lot of trouble as a country.
Let me ask you, Lisa, about what Tara just had to say from a legal perspective. I mentioned this reporting in USA Today, and it's very broad about various people married to U.S. citizens in the process of getting their U.S. citizenship. They're being picked up. Their spouses are wondering what's going on. Immigration attorneys are saying in one form or another, anyone who isn't a legal permanent resident or U.S. citizen is at risk, period. Is that right?
Yeah,
Are they
and
right to be worried?
I would go further than that, because Mahmoud Khalil, whose case we've all been following, he's the Columbia graduate student who has been sent to Louisiana en route to deportation. He is a lawful permanent resident and not just on a student visa, married to a U.S. citizen who is expecting their first child. She's 8 months pregnant. If he is not safe, then what's to say other lawful permanent residents who might be connected to protest activity that the administration doesn't like are also in danger? I think that the classes of people, Chris, who are at risk here go far beyond those who are unlawfully documented and who are alleged to have committed crimes beyond just the crime of their entry into the United States. This is starting to widen and widen. And as Tara said, people's hair should be on fire right now.
Verbal orders do not have as much weight. That we'll see what the judge says about that in the next hour. My guess is he will not agree with that. But look, the bottom line to all of this, politically speaking, the White House, the president, they believe they're on solid ground because he talked about this. He promised this, and this is exactly what he's doing. But the bigger question is this the case that will end up at the Supreme Court? Is this the executive authority case that will be tested ultimately or not? We shall see. But as of now, the White House is making clear, even though they don't like the order, they are saying that they are not ignoring it, which, of course, that would sort of open the door to a constitutional crisis, and that is not what they say is happening.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, Caitlin Polantz, thank you both very much for that reporting. And now our panel is here, former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams, CNN anchor, chief political correspondent Dana Bash, former Democratic Congressman Mondaire Jones, and former Republican Congressman Peter Meyer. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here today. Elliot, we got to start with you. Because you got to, this distinction that they are making between an oral instruction from the judge and the written order from the judge, is there actually any merit to this?
I have never seen an argument like that made. If a judge says you're guilty, if it's a bench trial, you're guilty right then, regardless of whether the judge memorializes it in writing. If the judge says, I hold you in contempt of court, if the judge says, I sentence you to 10 years in prison, all of those things have weight on the judge's words. Now, of course, a written ruling has, it explains things and so on, but I've never seen, and appeared in front of dozens of judges, clerked for 2 of them, when they say something, it has the weight of a ruling in court, full stop. So I'm curious to see what happens with this hearing and where they go at that point.
Yeah.
So, folks, Republicans are not happy right now, and there's 2 groups of them. And they're unhappy for very different reasons. There's a very small number of Republicans, vanishingly small, who are mad for principled reasons. Because like Democrats and other reasonable people, they see what Trump is doing as a violation of due process. That even if these people aren't the nicest people, the people that Trump sent away to Central America, even if they actually did what they're accused of doing in some cases, although they have not, there's been no proof, no due process. But let's say they did, because there's no due process, you're setting up a scenario where this could happen to a citizen. What if one of those men sent to Central America, one of the 300 men, is a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident with like a green card or something, and they got no due process? You'd say, well, he can't do that. Well, first of all, he'll just ignore the law. But second of all, we don't even know if they were. We don't know if some of those people are U.S. citizens, born and raised on American soil. We don't know because there's no due process. And so the 1% of Republicans are mad about that. But many Republicans are mad because this is the exact thing that's waking folks up. People went to sleep. A lot of Democrats went to sleep in November, December, and early January. They were done, tuning out. No one was watching content critical of Trump, or very few people were, relative to now. And you know what happened? Trump awoke the world, and now the scandals are being exposed. Republicans had everybody asleep, and now they're mad because Trump woke everyone up.